What's really behind the resignation of Harvard's first black president? Claudine Gay has officially stepped down from the university's top job after a campaign of pressure over the school's response to the Israel-Hamas war, issues of anti-Semitism on campus, and allegations of plagiarism. Now, the controversy started last month after Gay and two other university presidents were grilled by members of Congress about their administration's response to the rise of anti-Semitism on campus. Their testimony drew outrage from the right, and shortly after, UPenn President Liz Magill was forced to resign. Claudine Gay also took heat after that hearing, exacerbated a few weeks later. Then a conservative newspaper published a report accusing her of plagiarizing passages in multiple academic papers. But since her resignation, outrage has poured in on Gay's behalf. Now, joining me now to break all of this down, we've been watching the story closely, our GBH News senior investigative reporter Philip Martin and Lynn Pasquarella, president of the American Association of Colleges and Universities and former president of Mount Holyoke College. Thank you so much both for you being here today. What a conversation this has been over the last few weeks, really. Indeed. And, you know, Philip, you and I were talking about this is more than just the protests that we saw on campus at Harvard and then this congressional hearing. It was a lot more than that.
Well, that's right. I think that what is happening with Claudine Gay is the canary in the coal mine, if you will, because some individuals are being very clear. I was in touch today with Ilya Shapiro, who is the head of constitutional programs for the Manhattan Institute, which is a libertarian right-wing think tank, which has been around for a long time. And their project, particularly since 2020, has focused on dismantling any vestige of what they call policies aimed at tackling what they derisively dismiss as systemic racism, structural racism. They don't believe there's any such thing. Their project or campaign is focused on creating merit within the academy, And they think DEI is the antithesis, let's do that again, of meritocracy. And so what they see in Claudine Gay, as this individual described her today at the Manhattan Institute, he described her as a model for mediocrity. So what we're dealing with is not just a question of her missteps in the context of speaking out against anti-Semitism. What we're also seeing is a campaign on the part of various institutions and individuals, including members of Congress, including the Manhattan Institute and other conservative institutes such as Heritage, to essentially dismantle this policy and programs of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. That's what this is all about. So I think we need to change the headlines. The headline is not about plagiarism. The headline is not about anti-Semitism. This is a bigger project. And groups like the Manhattan Institute are very clear. Christopher Rufo has been leading the campaign against this. Christopher Rufo has become a star within right-wing circles because he essentially took the term critical race theory and turned it into a curse word, a curse phrase, rather. Critical race theory is something very serious in the context of law and legal studies. But he said it's something that's being taught within K to 12, which, of course, makes no sense. It's not true. Right. He said it's part and it's being infused in every aspect of our life. What he really meant to say was anything that they associate with the term woke is antithetical and problematic to this notion of merit, as they see merit within the campus. And merit, they feel, is something that Claudine Gay did not represent. Thus, they're targeting Claudine Gay. And she's not, and he was clear that she will not be the last in this campaign to rid the campuses of the results, as they see it, of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And she, again, is seen as the poster child for that.
Yeah. And Liz, Lynn, apologies. One of the things that really has been a conversation on college campuses, how do you handle this in a world where college campuses are trying to figure out how to respond and react to how students are feeling. What's the right way to respond and react as the head of these institutions? You're former president of Mount Holyoke College. I mean, this has got to be something that you think about as you're watching this play out in the news.
Absolutely, especially as president of an association whose mission it is to advance the democratic purposes of higher education by promoting diversity, innovation, and equity in liberal education. And so rather than recognizing the inextricable link between equity, diversity, and excellence as foundational to our nation's historic mission of educating for democracy, this campaign by Rufo and his colleagues upends that and reinscribes the notion that equity, diversity, and excellence are inconsistent. And as we've just heard, the consequences are profound and far-reaching. Look at what happened with the Supreme Court decision that has abolished race-based admission. Look at this rhetoric and attempts by campus leaders to ensure that our campuses are places of welcome and belonging for all students. It leads to what Claude Steele talked to as stereotype threat, the notion that students of color, women, don't deserve a place in the academy because, after all, you're only there because we've abandoned merit in favor of social justice warriors, according to Rufo and others. And the headlines this morning were egregious. Not only Stefanik and Fox taking credit, but when he uses the language with respect to President Gay of saying scalped and then says, we're coming after all of you, it creates an environment of intimidation and violence that has a chilling effect. And that's exactly what it's designed to do. So Scott Yenor, who wrote the playbook for Governor DeSantis in attacking DEI, as you know, in Florida is a place where woke goes to die, said, our goal is not to reform higher education. It is to dismantle it and make sure that the brand of higher education is like the brand of Philip Morris. So anytime you think about higher education, you think about death and harm and destruction.
Yeah, and part of Claudine Gay's resignation letter, we have it here, says that it has been distressing to have doubt cast upon my commitments to confronting hate and to upholding scholarly rigor, two bedrock values that are fundamental to who I am, and frightening to be subjected to personal attacks and threats fueled by racial animus. To me, it seems like with Claudine Gay's trajectory with this whole thing, almost it feels like a cautionary tale that shouldn't be there. Like if you don't step perfectly, then you will fall. And it didn't seem like, even though Harvard voted to keep her in, the support wasn't there internally. And I'm thoughtful about what that means for other folks who will come after her.
Well, that's right. And Lynn said something I just think is spot on when she talks about equity and excellence.
Yes.
A lot of people think that those things are asymmetrical. And the fact is, you can many of the students I've interviewed over the years have been absolutely exemplars of excellence. And I'm talking about Black and Latino, Asian students, students of color who some folks might feel should not be within the academy. The same thing has been said for some scholars like Khalil Gibran Muhammad, who I interviewed today also, who said something that was very interesting. I did not realize this, that at the congressional hearing, his class was actually pointed out, spotlighted as one of these classes of mediocrity. And it was also spotlighted as a class where anti-Semitism is promulgated. And I think we have to take a step back and realize that even the term anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism is a real thing. We've seen it over the years basically turn into a crescendo of hate on the part of groups like the National NSA 131 and so NSC 131 and so on and so forth, hate groups. And we've seen some individuals who have responded to this situation in Gaza with anti-Semitism.
Right.
But to accuse the president of Harvard of anti-Semitism and to weaponize that is problematic. And I'm pointing to people like Bill Ackman, the billionaire who has used his power to basically bring down Claudia Gay. He militates correctly against anti-Semitism, but embraces Elon Musk, who promulgates anti-Semitism. So we have to question if this is the real goal of even individuals like Bill Ackman, because he has, again, joined with Barry Weiss, has joined with Elon Musk to target diversity, equity, and inclusion. That seems to be, now he's saying that that's tantamount to anti-Semitism. It's an interesting confluence of events and circumstances that are going on. It's bringing together interesting bedfellows, people who embrace anti-Semitism, like Marjorie Taylor Greene,
right,
now posing as a friend of Jewish people, and Elise Stefanik, who just months ago, in the last election, endorsed an anti-Semite in New York, is now seen as someone who is militating against anti-Semitism.
Well, Phil, we actually have a portion of Bill Ackman's 400-word tweet on Gay's resignation. It reads, under DEI's ideology, any policy, program, educational system, economic system, grading system, admission policy that leads to unequal outcomes among people of different skin colors is deemed racist. Harvard must create an academic environment with real academic freedom and free speech where self-censoring speech codes and cancel culture are forever banished from campus. And Lynn, I'd love for you to react to that, because I know that seems like that's the antithesis of what the organization is trying to do, this network of colleges and universities that you represent.
Right. Well, it's ironic because these same critics who were decrying the chilling of speech and cancel culture have employed that tactic as a way of canceling President Gay and as a way of chilling speech using threats and intimidation.
What happens now on colleges and universities? Like, is there a conversation being had right now about how to respond and react to this situation, how to respond and react to students who are activated by the conflict between Israel and Hamas?
There are many conversations going on, and many critics. I'm thinking of Zeke Emanuel, first and foremost, who talked about the failure of liberal education and the ways in which we fail to teach students to have a moral compass, to speak across differences, to imagine the possibility that some of their most fundamentally held beliefs might actually be mistaken. And yet, in these attempts to dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion, to implement educational gag orders that proscribe a discussion of divisive concepts, LGBTQ plus issues, even reproductive rights, we deprive students of the very education that they will need to position them for success in work, citizenship, and life. We must be able to engage in the unfettered pursuit of the truth, the free exchange of ideas, without fearing that we will be harmed as a result of conversation. So there's a renewed emphasis on respectful dialogue, listening critically and with understanding, and ensuring that the rights of all are protected. And what this conversation on the Hill did was to frame the issues in a way that mandates that we reconsider speech codes on college campuses. But we also have to look at this in the broader context of an attack on higher education. Over the past several years, where confidence in higher education has reached its lowest point ever, with only 36% of the American public believing that higher education is headed in the right direction, or that a college degree is worth the investment, and critics claiming that higher education is too expensive, too difficult to access, doesn't teach people 21st century skills. And what we're hearing, of course, from the Hill is that we are bastions of liberal progressivism that are brainwashing the next generation of snowflakes to melt at the slightest abrasion of their sensibilities. And yet, who are the snowflakes now?
Right. Well, Lynn Pasquarella and Philip Martin, thank you so much. This is a conversation we're going to continue for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.